and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 2 English lesson on simple verb tenses, right? So we are going to basically do like a little review over simple verb tenses. And before we start with our lesson on simple verb tenses, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged into aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts, grade 2, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of simple verb tense review. And when we hear the word tense, right? If you just hear the word tense, then it means that it's got something to do with the past, the present, or the future tense. So the past tense, present tense, or future tense. And if we put the word, let's say, verb tense together, right, then it means that it is the action that is taking place either in the past, in the present, or in the future. But we're going to find out more about that during the course of our lesson. All right, so we see that chapter is simple verb tenses, which is a review that we're going to be doing over this chapter. Our subject is English, which is also language arts. Grade 2, and the lessons that we're going to be focusing on under the chapter of simple verb tenses. It is the question is the sentence in the past, in the present, or future tense? So we're gonna have to find out is the sentence in the past tense, in the present tense, or in the future tense. But we're not going to find out about the present tense, the past tense, and the future tense. And we're going to start with present tense, right? And a present tense verb tells you about something that is happening now, right? So present means now, right? And when we use the present tense verb, then it means that it is the action that is taking place now, something that is happening now. So the present tense verb, it tells you about something that is happening now. Most present tense verbs are regular, which means that they have no ending, or they end in either S or they end in ES. So once again, most of the present tense verbs, they are regular and they have no ending, or sometimes they just end in S or ES. So when we say that it is regular, then it means that it is almost like it follows a specific rule. right? Where we can say that we add an S after the verb to show the present tense, or we add an ES to show the present tense verb. And two verbs, right, that are irregular in the past tense, we can say it's to be and to have. And when the verbs are irregular, right, then it means that it does not follow any rules. You are just going to have to remember their forms, right? Because remember, I also said that with most present tense verbs that are regular, they either end in S or they end in ES, right? But if the two verbs are irregular in the present tense, which is like to be and to have, then it means that there's basically no rule that you're going to have to follow, but you're going to have to remember their form. So if the verb changes, right, then it means that you're just going to have to remember that irregular verb, which is in the present tense, because it has no rule that it follows, right? So you're just going to have to remember the forms. All right, so now if we look at the past tense verb, right? So we looked at the present tense verb, and the present tense, it basically tells us about something that is happening now, right? Present means now. And if we look at the past tense, and the past tense verb, it tells you about something that has already happened. So which means that it happened already. Because it's in the past. So whether something happened this afternoon, whether something happened this morning, whether something happened yesterday, last week, last month, or even last year, that means that it happened already. And that is basically in the past tense. It's in the past. And with most past tense verbs, right, that are regular, right, they then end in ed. So if the past tense verb is regular, then the rule is that that verb ends in ed. For example, watched. So now you can say, now I watch soccer. But yesterday I watched soccer. Now I play with my friends. But yesterday I played with my friends. Now I kick the ball. Last week I kicked the ball. Right? So these are regular verbs, right? So these are verbs that are regular. And they basically follow the rules where you just need to end. It basically ends in ed. And then we have some of the verbs that are irregular in the past tense, right? So like for example, saying, I sing a song. Last year in the choir, I sang a song. So you see the word changes from sing to sang, right? I go to school. Yesterday, I went to school. So do you see how the word changes? Because these are irregular, or specifically, these are irregular in the past tense. And with the verbs being irregular in the past tense, right? There's no rules that you're gonna have to follow. For example, like saying it ends in ed, because as you can see, the words are different, right? So you're just gonna have to remember the forms. You're gonna know. You're gonna have to remember the past tense form when it is irregular in the past tense. And then we have the future tense, right? And the future tense verbs, they tell you about something that is going to happen, which means that it did not happen yet. So it is going to happen. And basically, all future tense verbs, they use the word will. So all future tense verbs, they use the word will. And with the future tense, right, like we said, it's going to happen, meaning whether it happens tomorrow, whether it happens next week, whether it even happens in 5 hours from now, next year, it is going to happen. It will happen, right? So it's like, if example, if we say in the present tense, I play in the park. This is in the present, right? And I put here present. So I play in the park. But in the future, you can say I will play in the park. And there we have the word will and a verb. So I will play in the park. Even if, let's say, I sing in the choir. So present tense, a sentence in the present tense, let's say I sing in the choir. So I sing in the choir, but in the future, right? Like the future tense, we can say I will sing in the choir. And there we have will. And this basically, the sentences, they basically, especially this one, it shows the future tense. Shows that something is going to happen, meaning I will sing in the choir. So when schools officially start, then I will sing in the choir. Or let's say when choir officially starts, then I will sing in the choir. And that is basically the future tense where we show the word, or we use the word will. So now if we look at these words, right? We made mention of the present tense that shows that something is happening now. Past tense, which shows that something has already happened. And then we have the future tense that tells us about something that is going to happen, right? And when we look at how to basically use, let's say, either the present tense, the past tense, or the future tense, let's say words that may assist or help in, let's say, finding words with present tense, past tense, and future tense, right? When we make, for example, have or we make sentences within the present tense, depending if it is singular or depending if it is plural, we either add an S or we don't add an S. If it's singular, we add an S. If it's plural, we don't add an S. Right? Plural, singular. So, for example, if we make a sentence, let's do this, bring that a bit down. All right. So now we're going to try and make a sentence using all of these words. Right? So it's either we're going to use the present tense, which is walk or walks, walked in the past tense, and future tense will be will walk. All right, so we can then say he. This is now in the present tense. I'm going to put here present. Right, so in the present tense, we can say he walks the dog. Right? So that is our sentence in the present tense. And there we have our word walks. If we look at a sentence that is in the past tense, right? Then we can say he walked the dog. And there we have our verb in the present tense, which is walked, and we added an ed. And if we look at the future tense, this a specific sentence in the future tense, then we can say he will walk the dog. Right? So this is basically 3 sentences, one being in the present tense, one being in the past tense, and the other being in the future tense, right? Present tense, meaning it is something that is happening now. He walks the dog now. In the past tense, he walked the dog. And in the future, he will walk the dog, right? And remember, we said that within the future tense, we use the word will, followed by the verb. So that is basically just a few examples or an example of how we can use a sentence within the present tense, past tense, and future tense, and how we basically use, let's say, the one word or the one verb, but how it changes based on the specific tenses. And that is why our chapter is simple verb tense review, because we are basically analyzing or reviewing the different tenses, which is the present tense, past tense, as well as the future tense. Right? All right, so now I'm going to just do this, and then I'm going to write down sentences for these ones. I'm going to use the same colors to show the present tense, past tense, and future tense. All right, so let's say they in the present tense, they go to school. So they go, there's our verb, go to school. That is now. It shows the present tense. It's something that is happening now. If we show the present tense, right, where we use the word go in the present tense, now we're going to see how the word also changes, right? So we can then say they went irregular to school, right? So in the present tense, which is in the present, something that is happening now, we can say they go to school. But in the past, we say they went to school. To school. I wrote school wrong. And now in the future tense, right? If we look at the future, then we can say they, remember we said will go, so they will go to school. So that basically shows the present tense, the past tense, as well as the future tense. All right. And we said we are doing our tutorial lesson on aplusstudents.ca, right? So we're going to go to aplusstudents.ca and then we're going to do a few more activities and then we're going to do our test. And remember, whatever we don't finish together of the test, you're going to complete on your own. And once again, we said the present tense verbs, they tell you about something that is happening now. Past tense verbs, they tell you about something that happened. And the future tense verbs, it tells you about things that will happen or that is going to happen. All right, so we're going to our lesson that says, is the sentence in the past, in the present, or in the future tense? All right, so once again, before we continue, we say that the present tense verbs, they tell you about something that is happening now. And with the regular present tense, right, the word either ends, the verb ends in S or ES. We have the past tense, which tells you about something that has already happened. And with a regular past tense verb, the verb then ends in ED. And then we have the future tense verbs, right? Which tell you about something that is going to happen. And all of our future tense verbs, they use the word will. So will followed by the verb, right? To show the future tense. All right, so now we're going to say which tense the sentence uses. Does it use the present tense? Does it use the past tense? Or does it use the future tense? So if we look at the sentence, at the party, my sister danced together. So at the party, the sisters danced together. So we now need to say if that sentence is in the present tense, past tense, or in the future tense. And specifically look at the word that is in bold. The verb that is in bold, is that in the present tense, the past tense, or the future tense? Danced, it even ends with an ed. What tense, or what verb in a specific tense ends with an ed? Is this in the present tense, where at the party the sisters danced together? Or is it in the past tense where the sisters danced together? Or is it in the future tense where the sisters danced together? All right, so if we specifically look at this word danced, all right, if we look at the word danced, then dance, especially it ending in ed, it basically shows us that this is in the past tense. So this is in the past tense. It basically shows that something has already happened. So it happened that the sisters danced together. So this is in the past tense. So in the past tense, they danced together. Now we need to say which tense does the sentence use. The basketball game will begin in a minute. Is that in the present tense, the past tense, or the future tense? Will begin in a minute. So the basketball game will begin in a minute. Does that show the present tense, the past tense, or the future tense? Oops. And if we specifically look at this word, will begin, does that show that it is currently in the present tense? Does it show that it's something happened already in the past tense? Or does it show that something is still going to happen, which is in the future tense? Will begin. The basketball game will begin in a minute. Present tense, past tense, or future tense? All right, so if we look at, especially at the word will, then this is the future tense. Because remember, we said that within the future tense, right, it tells us about something that is going to happen. And the future tense verbs, they use the word will. So they use the word will before our verb or before the verb. So this is in the future tense. Will begin. Mr. Lorry or Lowery gives his son $1. So Mr. Lorry gives his son $1. So if we look at that sentence and we look at the word that is in bold and underlined, so gives is in the present tense, which is happening now, in the past tense, which shows that something that happened already, when the future tense to show that something is going to happen. So gives. And if we look at that sentence, then the tense that we can say that was used within that sentence, it is the present tense. And remember, we see the present tense either ends with S or it ends with ES. All right, so this is in the present tense. It shows that something is happening now, right? All right, let's do a few more examples. Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. We need to say is that in the present tense, in the past tense, or future tense. Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. So the word sings, does that show that it is happening now in the present? Does it show that it happened already, which is in the past? Or does it show that it's going to happen, which is in the future? Will happen. Sings. So if we look at the word sings specifically, right, then we can say sings, or the sentence that says Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. This is the present tense. And remember, we said the present tense shows that something is happening now. And with a regular verb, right, we say that it either ends in S or ES. So this is in the present tense. And then Dale uses honey in the cake. So Dale uses honey in the cake. So Dale uses, the word uses honey in the cake. Is that the present tense verb to show that it is happening now? Is it the past tense verb to show that it happened already? Or is it the future tense verb which shows that something is going to still happen? So Dale uses honey in the cake. And this is, you can say this is the present tense. Something that is doing now, right? So the present tense is using honey in the cake now. All right, so now we're going to our test. And remember, whatever you do not finish now together, or the things that we're going, the test that we're going to do together, whatever you don't finish, you're going to complete on your own. So now we're going to have to say which tense does the sentence use. Is it the past tense, present tense, or future tense? The clown jumps through the ring. So the clowns, they jump, or the clowns jumps, the clown, one clown, jumps through the ring. Is that in the past tense, in the present tense, or in the future tense? And if we look at that sentence, specifically the word jumps, that basically shows what the clown is doing now. So this is the present tense. All right, so the present tense. We will camp for 2 nights. So we will camp for 2 nights. Is that in the present tense, in the past tense, or does it show the future tense? Remember, we said within the present tense, it shows things that's happening now. In the past tense, it's things that happened already. And the future tense, right? It shows that things are going to happen. And the word before the verb ends, it's basically the word will. So will camp, if we specifically look at the word will, is this in the past tense, in the present tense, or in the future tense? And if we look at the word will, then we can say this is in the future tense, right? Future tense. All right. His dog chased the chipmunk up a tree. So his dog chased the chipmunk up a tree. Look at the words chased, ending with an ed. Chased. Is that in the past tense, present tense, or future tense? Chased. If his dog chased the chipmunk up the tree. All right, so if we look at the word chased, then we can say this is in the past tense. Because his dog chased, which means that it happened already. Chased the chipmunk up the tree. And it is in the past, which is the past tense. All right, so Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. So sings, is this in the present tense, in the past tense, or future tense? So sings, if we look at the word sings, Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. Is that in the past tense, in the present tense? So sings. And if we look at the word sings, right, Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. It shows that she is doing it now, so which means that it is in the present tense. So Ross will wash the dishes after dinner. So will wash, especially if you look at the word will, is this in the past tense, the present tense, or in the future tense? So will wash. So will wash. So if you use the word will, and then we can say will is in the future tense. So Ross will wash the dishes after dinner, and that is in the future tense. So will wash, especially the word will, give us the idea that it is the future tense, meaning it is going to still happen. So will wash, sorry. At the party, the sisters danced together. So danced, is that in the present tense, the past tense, or in the future tense? So the word danced, is that in the past tense, the present tense, or in the future tense? So danced. And if we choose the correct tense, we can say it is in the past tense because it shows that something he did already. He danced together with his sisters, or with the sisters. So the sisters danced together. And that is in the past tense. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on simple verb tenses. We made mention that the present tense verb tenses, it basically shows something that happens now. In the past tense, it's something that happened in the past. And the future tense shows that something will happen or it's going to happen. So the future tense, you first add the word will as well as the verb. All right, so this is the end, grade 2. Thank you very much for joining our class in simple verb tenses. And you should have a good evening further. Goodbye.